All right, so we're moving on to a question. The question of the day, week, or whenever you see this. It's a question for you. So we're going to talk about assessment and intervention planning. So here's the question. A client arrives at an outpatient clinic and reports difficulty sleeping, irritability, and feelings of hopelessness over the past month. The client has no previous mental health history and denies suicidal ideation. What should the social worker do first? So let's run through the answer options and then we'll talk about the question type and so forth. A, do we explore the client's current stressors and coping mechanisms? B, do we administrate a depression screening tool? C, do we develop a treatment plan focusing on improving sleep hygiene? Or D, do we refer the client to a psychiatrist for medication evaluation? So as you can see, we're running through this question really quickly this time as we took our time with the initial one. This one, the type of question, is it a reasoning, application, or recall? In this case, it's a reasoning. The reason being is because it requires logical prioritization. That is what we're using reasoning for. Steps to answer. We want to identify the key terms. In this case, it's first. So it's identifying immediate action that's needed. What do we do first? Not next, not what's best. What do we do first? And we also want to focus on the social worker's role. This ensures the client's safety and that we're following the proper protocol. In this case, it seems like the social worker is working in a clinic and they are actually an outpatient clinic. So they're probably like an outpatient therapist. That's what we could assume based on the limited information that was provided. We also want to prioritize the most pressing issue. Here, they're having difficulty sleeping, irritability, and feelings of hopelessness. But what is key is that they have no SI, so no suicidal ideations in the past or the present. So that is a huge relief. This client just has symptoms that we need to assist, and that is a presenting problem. And the ethical implications here is that we want to just ensure that we're doing an accurate assessment of the client and making sure that their needs. So the answer here is B. We're going to administer a depression screening tool. This is going to ensure that the social worker bases decisions on measurable data. So we're not making assumptions like, oh, this seems like a depression. It's been 30 days or more, 30 days or less, but they've had these consistent symptoms. We want to go a little bit more in depth. A is secondary, and then creating a treatment plan and referring out are other steps that might be essential, but they'll come later on because the question did say, what do we do first? So the rationale, when a client presents with symptoms such as difficulty sleeping, irritability, and feelings of the hopelessness, the social worker's first priority is to actually assess the client's condition. We want to administer a depression screening tool here because it aligns with evidence-based practices and it allows the social worker to gather objective data so we're not being subjective in our thought process. This also ensures that the appropriate interventions are selected based on the client's needs. So I'm going to leave this on the screen a little bit for you guys just to see what exactly is the rationale and the reasons the other options were not the answer. So you have option A, exploring stresses and coping mechanisms, option C, developing a treatment plan, and option D, referring to a psychiatrist. And of course, you can also pause the screen and review it and go back and look over the questions. Hopefully this is helpful for you. Keep in mind when you're looking at test questions, you also want to think a little bit further when you're practicing and preparing yourself for the exam. This question provided a lot of details where I'm sure we were jumping out and screaming what the client diagnosis would be. A lot of you probably were leaning to more of depression, but one of the key factors also is it gave a duration, a time frame of how long the client has been experiencing these symptoms. So even though this question wasn't a recall question where it gave you the data and said what diagnosis is the client most likely having or what's the symptoms they're experiencing, what would most likely be the diagnosis, it gave a lot of meat for that. So keep that in mind and understand that you can learn from each and every question that is provided to you. I hope this was helpful. Make sure you like, subscribe, share with a friend, and join us next week for the next question.